Hi, baddies. Welcome back to another episode of Tara's Baddies Club. I am Terra Newell, your host, and I'm so excited. Lately, I've been launching the podcast every other week because I've been doing my podcasting course. You can also join anytime, but we are doing the lives all through June and July. So they're going to be so much fun. It's 8 weeks for the podcasting course, and there has been a panel of so many amazing guests. I am just so blessed to have so many amazing friends in the podcasting industry. But today's guest is my friend David Weeks. He is a trauma survivor and he is also a trauma coach. He specializes in narcissistic abuse and also he has quite the interesting story that you'll get to know today. So if you resonate with him, please hit him up for coaching and we'll get into this episode. So let's welcome David Weeks. Hi, David. Welcome back. I am so sorry. We recorded the first time and there was such a glitch, and I don't know what happened to the audio, but I felt so bad that we couldn't even use that audio. But here we are again. I'm so excited to have you back to tell your story. Let's start at your story.
Yes. So how I entered the world of narcissism is I went through a very challenging childhood myself, and I experienced a lot of trauma. I always thought it was me. There's something wrong with me. I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't excelling enough in whatever I was doing. Like a common theme in these relationships is you often feel not enough but too much at the same time, and there's like no winning. And I feel like I was like going mad almost, like, why can't I figure this out? It's like this ever-changing labyrinth. And then I started getting into like relationships that were very unhealthy and toxic, and it was like I was dating the same person but different faces, and I could never understand why I kept falling for the bad guy, even though on paper they look, clean as a button. It's after my last relationship, it's what I guess really put the nail in the coffin, and I call it almost like the awakening. And once you like see it, there's like no unseeing it. And I just, like, being the researcher that I am, I just start like looking up the stuff I was feeling online and just doing, research. And then I kept finding these term narcissism, and I was like, well, what's narcissism? Like, I never was taught it in my classes in psychology, and even just like growing up, that wasn't a really frequent term we learned. And I ran across a wonderful woman called Dr. Romney, and I was like, wow. And it was almost like my life was put into color again. It was such a real experience, and I packed all my stuff and moved 1,000 miles away, and started a new life for myself at a very young age. I still in my early 20s, but I knew I could stay. If I were to stay in this relationship with my family, it would be solely because of the familiarity of it all and having something primal, but also knowing I would never get my needs met and I'll never have the mother I wish I had in my fantasy. And so, like, there's been like a lot of complex grief, and I don't really think it gets talked often enough about. Another word for complex grief is ambiguity grief, and it's like the person's still alive, but inside your mind they're dead. And you're not only grieving the relationship you didn't have, you're grieving yourself. You're grieving the dead version of you that never got to develop because of the developmental traumas you were subjugated to. It's, I think, certainly for me, now that I am out of it, seeing other families have what I should have had but never got can be very touchy for me. And still, like, when someone tries to be affectionate towards me, I'm very, very cynical. I'm like, what are you trying to get at? And so, like, it very much shaped my worldview in such a significant way. And I wanted to turn my pain into my purpose and have something good come out of this horrible story, and be an advocate for other men as well and other boys, because a lot of times we focus solely on the female experience, that a lot of men and boys don't come forward about their own experience, and they stuff it down inside, and they either try to run away from it by becoming a workaholic or becoming, drinking. And I really want to, start a movement within, the male communities, saying like, this happened to me too.
That's beautiful. Okay, so something we talked about last time is that you went through trauma at such a young age, and in the family dynamic, and also the enmeshment with your mother as well. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So for me, it all really started when I was 4. That's like the earliest memory I have, though. Through EMDR therapy, I'm having earlier memories come up, which still they're very fuzzy, very hazy still. Uh, I wouldn't even say I was 4, because I went back and I did some, investigating and timeline searching. And I was I like just turned 3. So I was like right when like memory starting to form. And I remember it as, as if it was yesterday. My father is putting me and my sister in this green Toyota and going down the neighborhood like every other day. And for whatever reason, I just start crying. Don't know why. 3-year-old crying. So my father turns around, heads back to the house, and hands me back to my mother, saying I can't handle him anymore. And I just felt like something's wrong with me. It was very profound in that experience, and my mom gave me, my warm strawberry milk that I always had to have, and I just like sat in our little green couch we had in the living room and just like looked at my mother and grandmother having this intense conversation around the kitchen island, and I just knew to like freeze, to not make any noises and really make myself small. And I think a lot of what I survived was by making myself small and insignificant enough so where people wouldn't notice me. And because anytime the spotlight was put onto you, it's almost like your parent can't tolerate that. They have to have the spotlight on them. And, your success is their success. Like, your talent is all because of them and their lens. And so the enmeshment really started when my father then left. My mom starts talking to the next door neighbor, who was a man in the militaries, in the Navy. They start talking. The next thing I know, they're getting married. From like my earliest memory of seeing my stepfather to now they're married, that window is very small. And he then went on deployment. So I feel like my mother really never gained an identity of her own, and she had to like latch on to other people to like know who she was. And so my father went away, my stepfather went away. My mom really never had anyone to attach to. She attached to me, and she would start treating me we had like this special relationship, which I now look at it as emotional incest. I very much in a way became her boyfriend. The way she was treating me, she would take me out, we would go on these dinner dates that my sisters didn't go on. Like, my sisters didn't even go on like these on dinner dates with themselves. My mother, it was mainly just me. And then she would cuddle me at night. And I just remember feeling like the room getting smaller when she would like cuddle me. The more I like tried to like wiggle out of her embrace, the tighter it almost got, and I like really just like would dissociate. And we would also like start taking showers together, and like that was very difficult. Looking back at it now, I think like even those memories are still very foggy. But like I, remember towering over my mother, and we're both naked in the shower, and I really much felt like her boyfriend. I became many different parts to many different people. I would become my mom's therapist when we would be having dinner at night, and she would excuse herself to the bathroom. I knew that was key for I'm going to go cry because my soon husband is now 2,000 miles away overseas, and I would be the one to calm her down, be like, it's okay, like he still loves you, he's coming back. And I'm doing this all at the age of like 6, and I was getting none of that in return. Um, it was almost like if mother was happy, I was happy, and if mother was upset, then we were all upset. Like our moods were very dependent on hers. As as I got older, that enmeshment really got worse, but like it like morphed in different ways. It became a little less sexual. My stepfather came back from deployment, and I was immediately discarded. I wasn't really seeing the same lens anymore. We slowly stopped going on these dinner dates. We only went on them when he was away out of town, because he was high ranking in the military, so he'd have to stay at base from time to time. We would go out then, and yeah, it was a lot of enmeshment and not really being able to think for myself. I feel like one of the things I came out of childhood was never really knowing who I was and feeling like an imposter in my own body, like not just like imposter syndrome, but like imposter syndrome, but like times 10. Like, who am I? And almost like my body doesn't belong to me. And like my mother would take baths with me, and I would being a curious little boy, I would play with my parts. I didn't know what they were at the time, and next thing I know, I'm getting recircumcised again. And it was very triggering for me because I was having seizures at this time, and so I was like, okay, we're going to another appointment. And when I got there, the man tells me, to disrobe. I put on a gown. Next thing I come out is like I wake up from anesthesia, and like my bottom is hurting, and I have no idea why. And I remember like we went home, I went to the bathroom, and just putting my pants down and just seeing like stitches all over like my private parts, and I just like started crying hysterically, like what just happened to me. And my mom treated it as if it was nothing. She was like, get over it, fewer or less words. So and like that, of course, like the scarring, the stitches healed and everything, but also like it left me in a sense mutilated, and that's something I've still had to like work on as an adult. And so like the enmeshment I learned from that was maybe adults don't need permission to touch me. And I was like, they're adults, right? Like, and I'm just a kid. I'm supposed to look up to them. They're supposed to have all the answers. So maybe I shouldn't question them.
Yeah, wow. And then I know that later in life that led to different relationships that were inappropriate, not from your part at all, but from their part. You know, grown-ups that preyed upon you as well to get into these relationships with you.
Yeah. So I was trafficked as a kid, which went on for many years. It was really like, I call it the perfect storm of what happened to it. So like, the enmeshment I had as a kid of being, felt special, that was a component to it. And then I started puberty very early. I started puberty when I was 7, which is like 5 to 6 years like before most boys start. And I was never put on hormone blockers. I was never, given a reason why. I just started growing like hair on my legs, um and body hair. So that happened. I was always almost ahead of the curve with my peers, just like emotionally developly. I was growing too fast for what was age appropriate. And then also my mom would start desecrating my body And when I was 12, she put me on MyFitnessPal, which tracks all of your caloric intake and tracks your physical activity. And my mom told me you need to go on a diet. Like you're getting a little husky. That's what they would call it. And just like feeling again like a lot of shame. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm not that. Like, and I was like, well, maybe this is why my mom's not loving me. Why this is why society is treating me differently. And so it very quickly became a game of like how much deficit I could have, of how much less calories I can intake, and like less sugar and less carbohydrates. And I started losing weight really fast. At my lowest, I was like 125 pounds, being like 5'8". So I had very little to me. Um, and my mom, just like pick apart my body, like your voice sounds like Squidward, or my singing voice sounds like Kermit the Frog. Like she knew I loved singing ever since I was like 4. I would sing, and one day she would record me singing, and she would have me listen to it, and she would just like laugh at it. And I wasn't making America's Next American Idol, but it was still very, again, like humiliating for me. She would say I have thunder thighs, that my hair looked like the man on the Weatherman, that I look like a thumb from Spy Kids, and just like really awful stuff. Like, hey Eeyore, I would carry a blanket with me because it was cold in our house, and I just liked how warm it made me feel. And apparently that's a thing that a lot of trauma survivors deal with. We take warm showers and we like cuddling ourselves up in blankets because it's that warmth that we weren't getting from our parents. And so that was all happening. I watched this rated R movie with my parents, and there was no talk afterwards about what we saw. And there was a mentioning of like a sex tape in the movie, and I just like looked up, as every curious 13-year-old, I'm 6th grade at this point, what's a sex tape? And thousands of pornographies like come up, and I'm like, what's this? As every curious 13-year-old boy. And I was like, this is different for me. And I started watching porn, and then suddenly I was like heavily watching porn. And then that turned into, as I got older, into, chats with people online. And I was having really a hard time with my sexuality. I always knew I was attracted to the same sex, but like I always thought that was bad because we were raised in the South, and that's like the worst thing you could do was to be gay. And so and there also wasn't people like me who were interested in the same sex. So I much felt alone in every way possible. And so I found, these online sites, and I would talk to these grown men, be like, what does being gay mean to you? And just like talking to someone, who's like me, and now I don't feel so different anymore. And I was really looking for that connection and attachment that was missing from my parents. I think if anything, I was looking for a friend, because again, like I was very much raised in social isolation with then the child passed along with the 50-50 custody with my mom and biological father. And then my mom would ground us with these outrageous punishments. We'd be grounded for like 6 months to a year at a time sometimes, and you wouldn't have any phone to like connect, to talk to friends or whatnot, and we would just be too terrified to like want to go out and put ourselves out there and make friends to begin with. And so I feel like a lot of times I was lonely, and I started talking to this person when I was 13, and he starts asking for pictures of me, and I, being wanting attention, wanting feel connected to someone, I sent them pictures, and I quickly learned the more provocative it was, the more attention I got. And so I would send pictures in very sexual poses as a kid. And again, like I had no suspicion of malfeasance of it. The guy eventually, convinces me to come out of my house. He gains my trust. We meet up one night, and I get in his car, and halfway down to his place. We stop at the stoplight, and he puts his hand on my thigh, and I was like, "What the fuck?" And I just start like shaking as if it's like 30 degrees out, shaking, and I was terrified. We like get to his house, and his house smelled completely of alcohol and cigarettes. It was like enough to like stick on you. It was disgusting. And we sat there, we talked for a bit, and then he had me come up to his bedroom upstairs, and he started declothing me, and he ended up assaulting me. And I remember talking to it with my counselor, and I feel like I was terrified not only of like what was happening, I was terrified of my parents finding out that I left the house and what they would do to me. They were very authoritarian with their punishments. And so I was more concerned. That's the sad part. I was more concerned of what my parents would actually do to me than the actual like danger I was in. And when the guy was assaulting me, it was like time didn't really make sense anymore. It like slowed down for a bit, and eventually he finishes, and then we cleaned up in the shower. He asked, if you wanted to pleasure me, and I was like, no, I want to get the hell out of there. And I ended up going back to my house, and I just like was so beside myself and like so disgusted. And the guy still talks to me, and I eventually tell him like how bad it felt and how painful it was. And like he told me, oh, that's normal, like it's normal to feel uncomfortable the first time you have sex. And as a 13-year-old boy, I'm like the cognitive dissonance. I was like, I guess that makes sense. Like, I've never had sex before, so maybe this is just the first time, whatever you call it. And I like continue to go back to his place, and this went over a period of I was like 17, 18, um, and I would start talking to other people online, um, thinking like this time might be different, thinking maybe this person would love me, because I was still impressionable and under the impression that these people loved me because they were having sex with me, not that they were just trying to scratch an itch. I had like no like awareness of that, because like what I was seeing in as a teenager, like these people who would have sex with their boyfriends, the sex would be so good that they would want to be their partner or whatever. And of course, like these are not, this isn't reality TV show. It's like, very skitful. And of course, as a teenager, I had no clue. And so I became a good performer. I thought maybe if I performed well enough, then they would want to be with me, but like they never stayed. And so the loneliness, I guess, just got worse. Because I was like, well, what's wrong with me? Like, why is no one wanting to be with me? And my parents eventually find out about everything that's going on, and instead of helping me, they lash out. They're like, how dare you put the family image into question? Your father could lose his security clearance. I could lose my license as a teacher. Like, you're going to break this family, and it's all going to be because of you. And there was no, oh my God, are you okay? Like, what's going on? Because they were seeing that I was sending naked pictures to these men, but they were like, it's his fault. They viewed me as this powerful man, not the 13-year-old child that I was. And I would be grounded for like months at a time. They would take everything from me. Eventually, it would be like they would start threatening to send me to an all-boys military school for troubled teens. They told my doctors that David is acting out in risky behaviors, and my doctors knew, like my therapist knew I was doing this, and nothing was reported. I was always treated as the criminal, as you're sitting, child pornography, like this is a crime, like you're going to go to jail. Not that this 13-year-old child is being coercively controlled by adults, is being taken advantage of. Like there is none of that language. And so I very much blamed myself for a while. Like it took me a while to like even, was I trafficked? Was I not trafficked? I was like, well, they did pick me up, and they would, take me to their place or to a hotel or a motel, and we would have sex. And a lot of the times I didn't want to have sex. I just like kind of went along with it because I learned that if I gave them what they wanted, it would be over sooner. And so I would just like dissociate in the third world. And so I never really knew what sex was that was healthy. And I feel like we call it our languaging for trafficking is so outdated because technology keeps advancing. I wasn't trafficked in the say that I had, a pimp. I was being trafficked through the apps of like the apps were my pimp. And I still feel like I had this like voice in my head that I had to obey, even though I didn't want to. And even as I got into my 20s, I still had that voice of like I have to obey, and I like have to go through with having sex with them, even though I really don't want to. That like sexual fawning I would experience of wanting to please the other person for attachment. And I feel like I wasn't even going on these apps for sex. It was that I wanted to get connection and attachment, because every time they would say like, oh, would you want to hang out, I would immediately like withdraw and like try to make up excuses, and I would eventually just like cave into it and be like, okay, like whatever, it's like no big deal. And I remember I was a lot of the times I was totally reliant on them, of like getting back home safely. Like they were all in like control. Like, I would leave my phone back at my house because it would be tracked, and I didn't want to get in trouble. And so I would leave my phone at my house. I would go and get into these like men in these strange cars, and they would transport me like 30 miles away. Like, and we would have sex like wherever they would take me. And I remember one time I was, I guess, like 14 or 15 at this point, and this guy sends an Uber to come get me, and we're in this silver Toyota truck, and I get into this car. I'm in my pajamas, like kid pajamas, and the man who's driving a car, we like eventually start going. He just asks me, he's like, hey buddy, like where are you going? And I was like, oh, I'm just going out to hang with some friends. There was like no questioning beyond that, and we get to Richmond, which is like 30 minutes away from my house. It's like winter at like 2 in the morning, and I get to his place. I have no way of like letting this person know I'm here because I have no device on me. I like get to his directory, and I just like freak out. I have like the biggest panic attack, and I just like start pushing every button on the directory, trying to get someone like attention. Maybe he'll come down. I don't even know his name. And I was like terrified. I was like, I am 15 in a major city, 30 minutes away from my home. I have no way of like knowing how to get home. I don't even have money on me to get an Uber. I'm not even old enough to get an Uber. No way of getting back home. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to walk, like 2 hours back to my house. And I just like start freaking out and start hyperventilating. And this guy, I asked him, like, people were passing on the street. I was like, can you give me a ride home? And like, of course, these people are like, no, I'm not giving you a ride home. Like, I don't know you. And eventually, the guy that I was supposed to meet up with comes around the corner, and just like is like, hey, buddy, and like, we're pals, and he like takes me up to his place, and he then assaults me. And then I feel like it just became so normalized to be assaulted that like I didn't really think of it as abuse. And I remember telling my therapist that like it was really hard for me to label it as abuse because it wasn't as bad as what I was receiving at home. And even if it was like 15 minutes, someone chose to be with me. Someone wanted me for 10 minutes. And I wasn't trafficked in the sense of like I got money or compensation. What I got in return, that I was validated of being good enough. for someone. And I feel like there's no price you can put on that after you've been chained and locked up for like decades.
How did you start to get out of that cycle or realize like, okay, this is wrong? I know you said you went to like some of the different schools or teen like stuff, and then like the toxic nature of even those is terrible, you know?
Like, how did I get out of like the cycle?
Yes, like how did you realize like, oh, I need to like, you know, get out of this, like I need to get away from these people, like I need to, you know.
I feel like it still followed me into adulthood. I was still going on these apps and talking to people. I would say it wasn't even until like a year and a half ago that I was like, maybe I shouldn't be on this anymore. Because these were really my only form of connection with people outside of school because I had no friends. And I didn't really see it as abuse. It was like, oh, everyone's in the gay community is doing this. And I feel like it also in the gay community is really normalized to meet up with random people and have sex with them than it is within the straight community. Like I can tell my friends like about stuff and they're like, what? And yeah, but like I'll have conversations with like people and like my gay friends and they're like it's so normalized. I would say once I started doing trauma therapy with my therapist is when I was like, okay, like maybe I went through was abuse because like I would go through these periods where like I would want it really badly. And that's like the long-term impacts of sexual abuse. I don't really feel like that's talked often enough about. We always hear about like the short terms, like the acute side effects of like the now, but like two things usually happen. It's either the person becomes hypersexual because they form a scheme of the only way I'm going to get love is I do X. And a lot of times people who are invulnerable, they learn the only form of connection they get is through sex. And the tragedy of that is they don't see themselves as deserving of anything else, of an actual like healthy relationship. And a lot of times there was like this one study where I shouldn't even say study. There was like these people. How do I know? Sometimes people can be drawn to the danger. Like there is this one doctor who's talking about our patient, and she was like, "I have this incredible husband at home that treats me like a queen, but then I'm really attracted to this person at work who treats me like shit and no idea why. Like I'm so sexually repulsed by my husband because he treats me nice, but like I have this like visceral reaction to my like coworker. So like a lot of people will unfortunately like re-traumatize themselves because they associate playing with pain with pleasure because when you're being assaulted, wires that wire together. So like even though you're like scared, you're also being aroused at the same time because of physical like stimuli to yourself, and those wires get connected. So danger is pleasure, and so that's one aspect. And then there's also the other one is hyposexual, which is what everyone expects people to be. It's not as common for male survivors of sexual abuse. They tend to be more hypersexual, but the hyposexual is like they are repulsed by any like emotional intimacy, like physical intimacy, just intimacy in general. They just associate that with danger. And so they become very avoidant. So that's more of like the long term impacts of, I guess, the behavioral impacts of people. And so I, it wasn't really even until like a year and a half ago when I started working with my trauma therapist and we started really dissecting it. And when I started doing EMDR, like I gave up a lot of the behaviors I was doing. Like I didn't have sex while I was doing EMDR because I wanted to do it correctly and I didn't want to re-traumatize myself. And so I started noticing things that like actually I really didn't feel safe with people as I thought. I just gave myself a false security of safety. When I started doing EMDR, I became repulsed. So I didn't want sex at all. Like avoided it like a plague because of just like of how uncomfortable it started making me feel when I started even doing EMDR. So I would say it's been really recently since I kind of came out of that cycle.
Well, I'm really proud of you for coming out of that, and even just like being out of that for a year and a half is so great because it gives you time to establish like your healthy boundaries and like really do the work on yourself, where I think now you probably be more open to like dating and like getting to know someone, you know?
Yeah. But I will say dating here in Miami is like don't do it. Don't try it
Don't
at
do it.
home.
Well, like I live near LA and don't do it over here either.
Don't do it, period.
Yeah, just
Get a
don't
dog.
date. Just be celibate, just be single, you know.
Yeah, I would say there is that, and a lot of the abuse that I went through was very mixed. It was, I can almost call it walking on exploding bombs, never knowing what would set them off. I would know if it would be a good day or a bad day by my parents walking up the stairs to the front door and hearing them turn the doorknob. Like I knew whether run and hide from like, an explosion that's about to come in, or if it's okay, to be myself. And the thing is, like, my mom would give these long chore lists. Everything had to be tidy. My mom, even like with the enmeshment, would have us do their laundry. And so like I didn't know that was like not normal until I started asking my friends, like even like a few months ago, and was like, did you ever fold your parents, laundry and touch, their undergarments and whatnot? And they're like, no. And I'm like, is it just me? So, yeah, I would say again, like everything becomes so normalized, and that's why I've been talking on my platform that like things that were normalized but were actually abuse, like having boundaries is framed as entitlement, because anytime you set up a boundary, you're being told that you're ungrateful and selfish. But the thing is, the ironic part is when they set a boundary, they expect you to worship it like no tomorrow. So it's very one-sided. Yeah, I totally lost my train of thought.
It's okay, it's the disassociation.
Yeah, I recently got evaluated with my doctor, and I got assessed for DID, for dissociative identity disorder, and
Oh, really?
yeah, and I meet the criteria for DID. Um, like I went to this one assessment, and I scored, it's like the DES2, and I scored 52 on it, and people who normally have CPTSD or PTSD, they score like a 15.
Okay.
And just people who have DID, they score like a 48 or above. And then so I did another comprehensive test, which was like 220 questions, and I continued to meet DID. So
Do you have alters though?
not really, and if they are, it's less pronounced.
Okay.
Like I feel like it's on like all like mental health, it's like on a spectrum. And I feel like in Hollywood, we only really see like the bad side of DID, of like people having like 2,000 alters and just like changing left and right. I feel like as I go through more therapy, I will uncover it a little bit more. There is like this feminine version of me that like is more confident
Okay.
than me, but like I don't have like a name for that.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I would want to get reassessed when I'm 25 or older, because that's when things start becoming a little bit more set in personality and that realm of pathology. So that's why I was like, it's a good thing to know. And a lot of times, like people, it takes like several years for them to keep meeting criteria of it, because like being in certain like life events can make dissociative symptoms in general flare up. And being, in Miami and not having, a lot of connection, because a lot of people here are fake. as their straight tans. Don't move to Miami. It's not fun.
Go visit and go to the Versace mansion, you know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's about all, like that's about it.
Yeah. We're currently sticking in the water. It's a fun time. Yeah, it's really bad.
Well, and then Dexter wasn't really filmed there, really. There was a few things filmed there, but for the most part, it was filmed in Long Beach, so I could go to Long Beach to see the Dexter vibes.
There's Bad Boys was filmed here.
Oh, Bad Boys, that's right.
Yeah. They shut down the entire causeway for it.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
It's like, yes, Will Smith, please run. And while I have to stick in traffic 50 minutes while you shoot a film that no one's gonna watch.
Oh my god. That is so funny. But like going back to the DID, I actually did interview Annalyn McCord. She was in like the remake of 90210. She was also in Nip Tuck, and a few other things, but she's like gorgeous. She plays like the rich, like hot girl in
Yes,
90210.
Rich Hot Girl.
Yes. And then she went on Dr. Phil, talked about DID, but she also came on the podcast and talked about it. But she has like actual alters that like come out but they're like manageable now, you know what I mean? Like they don't come out really anymore. But I did also have a client that had DID. I had to I had to get like a list of her of referrals, and luckily she was already seeking treatment somewhere. I not necessarily for DID, but I told her I was like, hey, I would bring up DID to them because I notice sometimes you go between like a 4-year-old to 45-year-old, you know, like kindly refer out. And it was a great conversation. And I just am not qualified in that field of DID. So that's why when you mention it too, I'm so intrigued by it to learn more, you know?
Yeah. We just started doing work to like identify like IFS therapy, which is
Okay.
a thing to help. There's also, I guess, like as I get older, and there's still like a lot of shame around it, so it's hard for me to like share, even like with myself, about some things I have. But yeah, it's I dissociate probably like 7 to 10 times a day, and like the world around me like doesn't feel real. I can't watch movies, go to a movie theater because I will always dissociate. Even like going into like the grocery store, like you feel like you're losing your mind. Everything kind of feels slowed down, and you feel like you feel fuzzy, like you're like, who am I? Like, what do I do with my hands? I don't know what to do. Like, and yeah, you get like a little confused, and yeah, it's definitely something that does impact my day to day. Even like with like relationships, it can impact it. Having like different parts of me that like come out. Like one part of me really likes someone, but another part of me like does not like that person at all. And so it's like kind of like this tug of war. It's like, oh, I like you, but also I resent you, even though you like did nothing bad to me. And then I have to be like, well, let's come back to reality, and I have to like use IFS therapy with me and be like, this is just a part of us, and parts are all good. We're safe. We're not trying to kill us like our parents. So yeah, it's a fun time. I get to play my favorite game. Am I safe here every time here?
Well, you are safe here. You are loved and accepted and supported, and I'm happy to have you. And thank you for sharing that with me. I think that it's fascinating to talk about even like the levels of it, because I was on a podcast yesterday and I disassociated at least 6 times. I was like, wait, what were we just talking about?
Yeah, I also feel like it's somewhat ADHD too,
Okay.
because I can like zone out and be like, what are they talking about? Well, I also like don't want to start listening now because then I have to like play catch up, and then it's like maybe I just like think about something else. And
Do you do the thing where you like, if you want to watch the show, you watch it like 3 times?
yeah,
I do that too. I have to watch it like to get it down. Like I'm like, okay, White Lotus. My friend's like, oh, you already watched it. Are you sure you don't like want to watch something else? I'm like, no, we could totally watch it again because I'll like know what's actually happening.
Yeah, I did that a lot as a kid. Like I would watch Shark Boy and Lava Girl on like repeat, and like I had my own dream journal, and I was such a cute kid. And yeah, I would watch the Avatar, like Last Airbender on repeat. I didn't really like realize how I just finished watching Legends of Korra and like literally started bawling my eyes out because I was like, it's over. And I was talking to my therapist, I was like, why am I so upset? It's a cartoon. And like, but it's over, the story's gone. And she was like, it's probably because of your childhood. I was like, yes, Amy, I know it's because of my childhood.
Do you go into like this depressive state whenever you finish a series or shows and it's like ending and then you're like, oh my God. And I like just go into like a few days just like, oh my God.
Yeah, I definitely do that, especially like when like the Avatar like I it ended and I was like so upset. And yeah, I even used ChatGPT. I was like, why am I so upset? And I was like, and it actually gave really good answers. I was like, because I have the premium version, I paid for that stuff, and so I got the rest with it. So
I've been told I need to pay for it.
it's honestly it's the best thing that's ever happened, but also it's taking all of our jobs. Double-edged swords. And so, yeah, like I definitely, it's glad you mentioned that because I didn't know anyone else experienced that. So I was like, why do I get so sad? It's just a cartoon show and I can just rewatch it, but like it's over. It's not like the show is like continuing, and how dare they like not make another season? Like that's like such a crime.
I like it when they just make one season of something, you get hooked, and then you're like, wait, what? Like there was Bitch in Apartment 23. They only made like 2 seasons of that and I was like, wait, that was such a great show.
I thought you would be like that bitch. What's her name? And that's why I was like, and then you continue with the bitch in the 23. I was like, oh, she's talking about a TV series.
It's such a funny TV series too. Like it's like this one girl is like a total narcissist, but like it's like comedy, you know? And then this other girl moves from a different state in the middle of the state somewhere. And she moves to New York and she gets this job and then like her boyfriend like breaks up with her and then the girl also like wants to show the girl that just moved in that like he's a cheater. So like she like cheats her and stuff and just like is terrible. Like takes her money, uses it for other stuff. It's just like a bitch, but it's like I don't know why it's so funny even though it's terrible and abuse.
Yes, out of people's trauma.
Yeah. But it's not real. So we're
Yeah,
like,
it doesn't
okay.
count.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Thank you, David, for sharing all of that. Now, I know that you mentioned before we started recording that you wanted to get into the chaos of your childhood. Can you talk about that?
So like there's a lot that I say don't remember. Mainly like before sixth grade, there was just so much that was like going on, and I didn't really realize how much chaos it was until I started writing things down. And so when my mom goes through like this really ugly custody battle with my father, and the way me and my sister were used as weapons against my father was very malicious. My mom made it her best to make sure that my father didn't get us. And when my father did have us, she made it very difficult for him. And so, like, I remember we would go over to like my father's house on the weekends, and my mom got us during the week. And even like that child pass along is what I call it because I felt more like property than actually a human being. It was very chaotic and very destabilizing to like go from one place to another, and I just wanted to stay at one place, like my friends. It was hard to like hang with friends because of that. That was something that like my sister was really upset about because there was no time for us to like interact with our friends outside of school. And so there's that, and like the things that my mother would tell us to like indoctrinate us against our father, like your father left for another woman and like took all the money that we were using for David because he was really sick and used that on like a glamorous vacation with him and his girlfriend. And again, I was like 7 when she told me this, so I was very young, should not have known this. I don't even know if it's true. I didn't really talk to my father about it. And so there is that aspect, and my being at my father's house, like it was very much like what can we do for the children? And my mother was like, what can the children do for us? So it was very that like it was almost like a 180. We would go to my grandma's house on my father's side, and they had a house in Smith Mountain Lake. And it was like magical, like going over there. I just felt so seen and connected um and so nurtured there. I would wake up, at 5, 6 in the morning as a kid, have no idea why, but I did that. It's the only time in my life that I woke up that early for pleasure. Uh, and me and my grandma would bake a cake in the morning, and I would always, pester my grandma. I was like, "Grandma, when are we gonna bake a cake?" And she's like, "Now, David, we're gonna have to wait till tomorrow to do that." And again, her very thick Southern accent she has, and so yeah, we would, wake up, and she would have her coffee. I would have my frosted flakes, and we'll see like the sunrise come up. Uh, and like her place was really pretty because it was like on top of the hill, so like and over and we were also tucked away in a cove. So like you got to see like the water, and then also there was like the mountains ahead of that. And so you'd see like the sun rise above the mountains. And it was just very like tranquil being there. And my grandma would we would play piano together. That's where I learned how to sing. And my father would take us out on the boat, and we would be out all day. We would go to the pier and grab ice cream. And I just felt very, again, like I didn't want to leave my grandma's house. And I would say around like 8, um, we were at my grandma's house, and I didn't want to leave. I was in trouble with something with my mother. And my father's, it's time for us to leave. And I was like, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And I just like try to sink my whole weight into like the rocking chair that we had, the recliner, and screaming like, I don't want to go. Don't take me back. I don't want to go. And then my grandma thought, it was just, a kid not wanting to leave grandma's house. But then it happened again. And she was like, okay, what is this boy like terrified of? And she asked me, and she was like, well, David, why don't we want to go home? And my mother came out, my grandma people, my sister came out, and I was like, now, David, mother still loves you. I just got up and I went out the door, didn't question anything. My grandma was like, why would she bring up about his mother? Like, what is going on over there? So she would start sending us cards, and she would ask us, did you get so and so card? And we would be like, no, we never got that. And then she realized my mom was intercepting the cards and throwing them away. So the only time we ever saw them was with my father. My mother made no effort at having a relationship with them. My mom even told my grandparents that they have grandparents, they don't need you. And I would say my mom is one of the most manipulative people I've ever met. Um, because she knows how to use emotion against you. And almost you feel bad for her, but then she like gets angry at you, and then you're like, wait, what? Like, I feel bad for you. Why are you mad at me? It's just like such a mind f. And my father starts seeing my father starts talking to this woman, and soon after that, they get married, and I meet their children, and I was really connected over to them, so I just was introduced to this new family. There's this one person named Linda, and she was almost like a mother to me. She was very nurturing, very protective of me. Being over at the house that my father just married in with my now stepmother is I don't really remember much from that. There's a lot I don't remember being there. That's, I'd say, like, a huge where a lot of the dissociative amnesia comes. But fast forward, I'm in the 3rd grade. My father takes us to go see, Megamind, which just came out in the theaters in November. We get home, he takes us back. It wasn't even a few minutes later, my mom gets a phone call, and I could tell by the tone of her voice it wasn't good. And so, I just didn't say anything. I just froze like a statue. And my mom, calls us down, and I could tell by the tone of her voice, like, what's prepare yourself. And so we sit down. She tells us that your father's just been arrested for wanting to kill the new family he's married into, and they also think that you are on the list. You guys are on the list. He wanted to get a hitman to kill us. And I was 9 when he told it. I was in the 3rd grade, and I went numb and feel anything. I was like, "What? We just saw him." And that was when, like, the major depressive disorders I developed really started kicking in. I would just, like, cry random times of the day, and my karate teacher I was seeing, because I'd started doing karate mainly because I didn't feel safe in my house, and I would cry during, our class, and the instructor would have to take me back and calm me down. I would cry during recess, and my teacher would have to, take me to the side, and we would talk about it, and, like, everyone knew in my neighborhood what happened, so it wasn't, like, confined to the family. I remember we went to, Buffalo Wild Wings. It was in the winter because I remember wearing this puffer jacket and just seeing a picture of what looked like me and my 2 sisters on the front magazine, and, asked my mom. I was like, "Is that us?" And she was like, "Oh, no, that's some other children." I knew she was lying. That's the other thing. I was I feel like one of the reasons why I was scapegoated was because I was able to read my mom very clearly. I feel like I was the only one. I was the truth seer, is what Dr. Romney calls it. I was able to see through my mom, and, like, she knew that I knew. And I remember seeing that same picture on my mom's wardrobe, and I was like, I just got very suspicious. Again, I didn't ask her. I've been trying to find that magazine, cannot find it, but it was all over the newspaper that my father was arrested. And when that happened, I didn't see the family that I just met ever again. I didn't see it would take over 10 years for me to see my grandparents and my cousins on my dad's side. There was a lot that was taken from that. I say that, like, you can always heal broken bones, you can't get more time. And my grandma missed out on a lot of, like, big moments for me. Like, to me, my grandma and my cousins are very much a stranger to me. Like, I don't know them. And it's really hard knowing what was taken away from me. I feel like that's, like, the greatest thing my my mom took from me was my innocence, was my light. I was such a happy kid, and as I got older, that light in me just, like, kept fading away. I learned I had to dim my light so my parents could shine bright. I couldn't outshine my parents, and I learned that to not have any needs, because to have a need was to create noise and be noticed, which caused trouble. And so you very much are, like, so appreciative at, like, the smallest breadcrumbs of love and attention. And my mom, she never did any of this for me. Like, she was very absent. My grandma on my mom's side was more of a mother to me than my actual mom, even though I, like, worshipped my mom. My mom was, like, my hero until, I got in middle school, and that kind of started changing. But, like, I remember wanting my mom to throw the ball to me as a kid, and she was too busy doing whatever she was doing, and like, asking her to talk to her while she's watching TV, and she would be like, "I'm busy watching TV. What do you want?" Like, completely, like, dismissive of us. And my stepfather was very scary. When he would yell at us, his eyes would turn black, and it was like that split second where it's like, dissociate and take cover, because, like, a bomb's about to, like, blow up. And he would yell at us until like our ears would start ringing, and would like slam doors and just be very in front of your, like he would literally like yell at you like 5 inches away from your face. If you cried, you got more in trouble. And just like he would pin me against my mother because we did have a very special relationship. And I think he was very envious that I had a relationship with my mother because he never got one with because his mom passed away at a very young age. And I think he didn't want me to have what he could with it. And so he would pin me against my mom and being like, "You're enabling him. You're the reason why he's acting out this bad." He'd just be very hard on me. And my mom really stopped defending for me. I would like look at her and be like, "Are you tracking this?" And it was just like, little by little, she would defend for me, but like that kind of fade away, and she would just take my dad's side. And the reason why I have trouble saying stepfather and father is because when I was little, my mom told me I had to call my stepfather dad. Like I didn't get a choice to do that. And I had to call my biological father, I had to call him by his first name. And so when I would call my biological father his first name, I would get yelled at for that. But if I called my stepfather by his first name, I would get yelled at for that. So I just called one person dad, the other person daddy, and I just like called it a day. And then like eventually it worked out. Yeah, it was, and I remember like I would say the chronic neglect was the hardest part of any of the abuse that went on. Like even like the physical abuse that happened, the financial abuse, the manipulation, like it was the lack of attention. It was so quiet that it was loud. I would like essentially have a coloring book, a puzzle, or the TV to entertain me because like I would be grounded a lot. So like my video games, which were like my safe haven, I would dissociate into, that would be taken away. And just like feeling completely abandoned, feeling completely isolated. And I remember I would have this radio, and I don't know if you know like the radio show Delilah, but she's a huge name on the East Coast, and she's doing it for over a decade. I'm like, bless her heart. And so she would have these guests come on about like, and they would say, like, "Oh, I love my partner, I love my husband, I love my child, so and so. Can you please play a song for them?" And she would play a song, and I would always cry because I was like, "What do they have that I don't? Like, why can't my parents love me?" And I, would pray every night, read the Bible back and forth until eventually one day I stopped praying because I was like, "No one's coming to save me." And that's what led to my suicide attempt because I was like, my parents found out that I was on these sites again, and I went on them to like delete my accounts because I was like, I don't wanna be tempted of going on them, even though, like, it wasn't I was struggling with temptation, I was being coarsely controlled. But I went on them just to delete them and everything, and, my stepfather, like, he sees my history, my browsing history, and he sees that I was on these apps, and so he, like, tries to pit me against my mom, and I tell my mom, like, "No, like, I went on these apps to, like, delete them and everything, like, don't you see?" And, my father my stepfather, would, be like, "He's lying." Anything I said would be, like, deflected. And I would just like run like for my life up to my room and like lock my door and slam it and lock my door and lock myself in and like pull my wardrobe in front of my door so they couldn't get in. And my mom would come up and she like peacefully knocked on the door, and I was like, and she's like, "David, can I come in?" So I thought she was coming in to like come like calm me down. So I opened the door, and I let her in, and I sit down on my bed, and she, like, slaps me across the face, and she was like, "I can't believe I ever believed you, and you're such a rotten child." And I realized the only way I was gonna survive this is if I dealt another 4 years of this, and I tried overdosing on the medication that I had in my room. Lucky enough that I tried overdosing on ibuprofen, and the doctor was like, "You could have taken like 100 tablets of that. Like, it wouldn't have negatively impacted you, but if you took Advil, you would have had like enough liver damage. You probably would have only lived like 2 years." And I was very fortunate I did not take Advil, and so I was still I told my mom I wrote a note and like I told my mom I started freaking out. I was like, "What did I just do?" And I like get my mom's attention and they're like busy doing our bathroom. They're like redoing a splash splash or whatnot. And I just like point to like the bag in my trash can. And I was like, and she's like, what was in that?" And I was like, I just point to it and I was like, "I just like took stuff." And she was like, "What?" And then my stepfather just starts getting all belligerent and is like, "What now?" And is like, my mom was like, "I think David just tried to kill himself." My stepfather is like chasing me around the house, and I don't know what he's trying to do, but he's trying to get me into like the truck to take me to the hospital. Of course, I don't know that. I just know there's like this 200-pound 5'9" guy chasing me around the house. And so like I like try to defend myself and I like whack him with things and he like pins me down and um which was very traumatizing because of the sexual trauma that I was going through. And he like puts me in the car. I go to the hospital. I cried so much my face was actually swollen. And they admit me to the psych ward the same day it was exactly a year my grandfather passed away at the same hospital I was admitted into. And after the social workers would ask me like, "Did anything bad happen? Like, are you being abused?" And of course, I would say no, because I was like, well, "What happens if I say yes? Like, am I going to be more abused? Am I going to put in the foster system?" We all know that's not any better. And so I just went along with it. And after that, they were like, "How dare you try to kill yourself? You did this just for attention." And I got grounded for that. And I was like, yes, who tries to unalive themselves for attention? And again, like my therapist, my doctor weren't seeing any of this. And my doctor was the one who was medically abusing me. She was best friends with my mom. And so like anytime I misbehaved, my mom would be like, "David's misbehaving again." And my medication would be changed like repeatedly until like I was on like very high dosages of Vyvanse and an SSRI medication at a very young age that like it put me in the hospital. So it was every day was like walking on exploding bombs, never knowing what would set them off. And like that was my childhood for like 20 years.
Well, thank you for sharing that with me, and thank you for talking about everything. And I'm sorry about, that. I think that there needs to be a lot of more information on suicide and that it's not a selfish act. It's actually that this person's hurting so much, can't take this pain. And, everybody has a reason why they want to do it. But I think it's really hurtful when I hear that. And I've heard a lot of survivors actually talk about that. And like, I've experienced that as well, where I wanted to harm myself and I've actually like hurt myself at times. And then that person's like, "You're a perpetual victim." And it like that just like it stings even more than anything. So I just want to thank you for sharing that with me. And, we're going to talk about the healing, about like what you do, in the nervous system, about your knowledge in it. But for the people that are dropping off here, where can we find you on social media? Where can we follow you for anything that's coming up?
Yes, you can reach me at DJ Weeks underscore. Again, that's DJ WEEKS underscore. And I am currently writing a memoir right now, which I hope to have out sometime late next year. So it's been something long time in the making that I've been wanting to do, and I can't wait to have it all together. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And we'll continue on for the Patreon. Thank you for listening to today's episode with David Weeks. If you like this episode, please leave a review on Apple or Spotify podcast. And also 5 stars always helps in the review, and it really helps with the algorithm. Also, if you are on YouTube, please leave a comment down below and hit the like button. I am so excited to have today's guest and talk to him. So I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. And until next time, I'm Terra Newell, and thank you for listening.